Epic gamers, Kinich and how will make your enemies rage quit, and today I'm here to tell you how to build them best. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. So what artifacts does this yapping lizard and his lowly servant desire? None other than 4-piece Obsidian Codex. The 2-piece offering him a 50% damage dealt increase during his Night Soul's Blessing state is very nifty, and the 4-piece literally gives him 40% crit rate. That is a lot. And yes, the 4-piece's buff will indeed apply to his first cannon shot, because he consumes the Night Soul before he fires out the cannon. Easily his best bet across all of his teams. You can't really beat 40% crit rate. He's constantly going to have max uptime on the buff when dealing the main source of his damage. Not to mention how it's conveniently flexible across all of his main teams, as he isn't reliant on any specific teammate in order to proc the full set effect. The same cannot be said for 4-piece Mayonnaise Hunters, his next best bet. It's only 4% worse than 4-piece Obsidian Codex, and has a weaker 2-piece. However, Kinich does not have HP loss mechanics built into his kit, so you're going to have to play him with our dearest Hydro Archon if you want to make the most out of his 4-piece. While this is a good set on him, I really wouldn't advise that you go out of your way to get this for him considering how restrictive it is, especially whenever you consider that his best teams are going to be his burning teams. You're basically locked to his Burgeon comps if you insist on using the set. Just use 4-piece Obsidian Codex if you can, because it is far less restrictive. You can opt to use 4-piece Unfinished Reverie on him as well, considering that the 4-piece rewards burning-based playstyles. While the set is indeed good for him, I would rather opt for one of the crit rate sets, as those are going to aid his damage more on the whole. Yet, with that being said, if you have a good 4-piece Unfinished Reverie set on hand, then yes, you're able to use it on him just fine. 4-piece Golden Troop also has the potential to be effective on him. This is mostly because a large portion of his damage output comes from his elemental skill blasts. However, because he's an on-fielder, you're basically never going to be getting the full 70% that you could be yielding out of the set. More likely is that his skill is going to be buffed up by 45%. 2-piece mix and match sets include 2-piece attack percent, skill percent, and danger percent. As for Kinich's main stats, simple. Go for attack percent, danger percent, crit percent. There is no real reason to use EM sands in his teams. After all, the main meat of his damage isn't reaction-based. You're not amplifying anything, it's raw dendro damage. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to be going for a crit damage circlet. This is because of how much free crit rate he gets from his 4-piece set effects. Then again, if you're using a set that doesn't grant him free crit rate, then you may end up using a crit rate circlet. As always, just use whatever suits your build the best. As for Kinich's stat goals, simple. Go for 2000 attack and 50 to 200 crit rate and damage on a SIG, 1800 attack with 60 to 200 crit rate and damage on a 4-star weapon with crit rate, 2400 attack with 45 to 190 crit rate and damage on a 5-star weapon with attack, and 2000 attack with 45 to 190 crit rate and damage on a 4-star weapon with no crit substat. Do keep in mind that with Kinich, you're generally able to get away with a lot less crit rate, considering that his primary 4-piece sets give him so much of it. But don't slack on crit rate too much, considering so much of his damage is portioned into nukes. Not critting any one of your cannon shots can really tank your damage output. Don't build this much ER on Kinich. This is how much ER you would want if you wanted to burst of him every single rotation, but you seriously should not be doing that. Just forgo building ER, and burst every other rotation with him. His burst is not important enough to justify building this much ER. While you can opt for sets that don't give him crit rate, I personally would opt for those that do. It makes building him so much easier, and when you consider how nuke-based this character is, he really does want that crit rate. In order to hunt Saurians effectively, Kinich is going to need the right weapons for the job. So what'll those be? None other than Fang of the Mountain King, his dedicated signature best-in-slot weapon. This was of course tailor-made for him. You get a crud ton of basic attack, and the crit rate is pretty small, because his best-in-slot sets already provide him with so much. That's not even mentioning the fact that the passive is able to increase the damage with his elemental skill blast seal by up to 60% at R1. It does also increase his elemental burst damage, but that's more of a nice bonus than anything else. Not too far behind would be 1000 Blazing Suns. The base stats it provides are exactly the same as Kinich's signature. He's also able to make shockingly good use of the passive, despite the fact that this weapon was designed from Aweka. Easily his next best bet. Not too far behind would be Serpent Spine, especially at high refinements. Seriously, this weapon always seems to be saving the day. It's very good on him. It does provide him with a lot of crit rate, which might be a little bit overkill if you're playing him on one of the crit rate sets, but it's still a very appreciated stat stick, and as always, the passive is absolutely busted. Just remember that this can be somewhat of an inconvenient weapon to use, because you have to wait before starting Abyss Chambers in order to build up all of the stacks. Otherwise, definitely a very good weapon for him. Verdict is an excellent weapon on him too. Lots of base attack ripe for the picking. Unfortunately, while the passive of this weapon is indeed capable of providing skill percent, you're more so only really going to be benefiting from the extra attack, because Kinich doesn't play with Geo teammates. Nevertheless, the amazing stat stick still makes it an amazing option for him, and yes, all other 5-star weapon options which are major stat sticks but don't really provide him much else outside of that are good weapons for him. In terms of free-to-play friendly weapon options, the craftable Tidal Shadow is going to be your best bet. It provides him with a whole lot of attack, and is a very easy to access passive. Not to mention how the refinements are free. It doesn't really offer him much else outside of this, but it's a very consistent weapon, and it'll indeed be very powerful for him as a free-to-play friendly weapon option. Earthshaker is also very strong for him. In fact, at max refinements, it's slightly better than Tidal Shadow at max refinements, and it's his tailor-made free-to-play friendly weapon option. Whenever a pyro-related reaction is triggered, he gets a whole lot of elemental skill damage, and you can yield a lot of attack out of this weapon. This is also craftable. It's not so much better than Tidal Shadow, where I would say you should go out of your way to craft this if you already have an R5 Tidal Shadow, but if you haven't crafted either of them yet, then I would go out of your way to get an R5 Earthshaker. Kinich and Hao have a very wide array of weapons that you can choose from. As long as it provides some combination of crit percent, attack percent, or elemental skill damage percent, then it'll be good on him. Yet who shall be swinging through not long with Kinich? His best team archetype is going to be the premium Burning Core. Ideally, you're going to have Emily on the end. The team centers around having an attack buffer like Bennett or Yansan, while having an excellent off-field power applicator in order to apply burning consistently, so that Kinich is able to fire away his cannon shots regularly. Honorary Son of Caledon Moika is going to be your best bet in terms of his power application. Not only because she's able to provide the Pyro Ring, which allows him to constantly apply Pyro with all of his normal attacks, but because of her A4, which is able to increase the damage he deals by up to 40% after she uses her Elemental Burst. And of course, she provides her own good bit of personal damage. Emily helps in aiding Kinich's A1. She helps maintain the consistency of burning on enemies. This is important because he gains 7 Night Soul points every 0.8 seconds whenever the enemy takes burning or burgeon damage. So with Emily around, you're able to pull off about 4 to 5 cannon shots. It's much harder to get that level of consistency if you don't have Emily around. You can actually get up to 6 cannon shots, but you have to be quite the pro gamer at Kinich. Also, Emily's personal damage is nothing to scoff at. Kinich Premium is easily going to be your best bet. Example teams include Gamerlad and his Angry Lizard, Bennett or Yansan, Moika, Emily. Free-to-play Kinich teams are quite strong too. I will say that the absence of Emily does hurt quite a lot, but you're still able to competently play him by having the 4th Salt teammate activate 4-piece Deepwood for your Kinich. You would most commonly use somebody like Kale or Fischl for this. In terms of free-to-play friendly power applicators, you have 2 options, Shangling or Pyro MC. The only annoying thing with using Shangling is not only her energy requirements, but the fact that you always have to be spinning clockwise, otherwise her Pyronado isn't going to be hitting the enemy. All of Kale, Shangling, and Pyro MC are free characters, so his teams are actually pretty accessible on the whole. Example teams include The Listener and the Yapper, Unlucky Kid, Yansan, the Liyue Chef, or Pyro MC, and either Kale or Fischl. His Burgeon-based teams work fine as well. However, because you're using Lady Farina in these teams and she drains HP, you have to use a healer in the final slot. Which does mean no Emily, unfortunately, but it's a good alternative if you're somebody that doesn't have Emily. Our dearest Hydro Orcon is also able to effectively allow Kinich to use 4-piece Mayonnaise Hunters, but you'd honestly still rather use 4-piece Obsidian Codex here. After all, it's a little bit more crit rate and it's more consistent, not to mention the buff is front-loaded. He's going to be relying on Burgeon procs in order to make the most out of his A1 here. It's a good team archetype. You would ideally rather play Premium Burgeon, but this is a completely fine alternative. Example teams include Pixelad, our beloved Lady Farina, the Motorcyclist, and Baiju. Yet how does this epic gamer work? Well, his normal attacks will deal 3 simple physical strikes. Nothing much else to add here. As for his skill, he'll latch onto the enemy and then start spinning around them. Whenever he spins around them, he does normal attacks that count as elemental skill damage called loop shots. And whenever his Night Soul bar completely fills up, he's able to launch a very strong nuke. He's then capable of generating these blind spots either when he latches onto an enemy or after he does a nuke. These will restore 4 Night Soul points for him. It's the main meat of his kit, so keep that in mind. As for his burst, he'll let out a dragon and yell, "Claim these souls!" And then his Molding Lizard will come out and start blasting everyone with Dendro damage. If you use this during his skill state, then you're able to extend his Night Soul Blessing by 1.7 seconds. However, like I said before, please don't sweat building ER for this. Just use it once every other rotation. As for Kinich's Ascension passives, simple. His A1 is what allows him to take real advantage of Burning and Burgeon. He regains a good chunk of Night Soul points every time Burning or Burgeon procs on an enemy. Good stuff. Very important to his kit. As for his A4, his elemental skill is capable of dealing some more damage based on his attack if Night Soul bursts get triggered. Even if Kinich himself is the one triggering it, it will still count. Pretty much just a nice bonus. Nothing much else to add here. As for Kinich's talent priority, simple. Go for this. Basically, his entire kit is his elemental skill, so you really want to hone in on leveling that up. I would personally crown it if I were you. His elemental burst isn't really all that important when it comes to damage, so you can just leave it at level 6, but if you want to level it up more, then sure, level 8 is fine. I just wouldn't touch his normal attacks if I were you. They do basically nothing for his entire kit. Kinich is a man who likes to do business, so if you want him to perform even stronger for you, then let's talk Constellations. 100% extra crit damage to his main source of damage output? Yeah, this is a pretty good C1. It's actually a pretty substantial increase to his damage output. Great stuff. His C2 does wonders for his damage. Considering that we don't have many sources of Dendro Reshiram in this game, that is an extremely valuable part of his Constellation. And increasing the damage of his first cannon shot so much? That's some really good stuff, man. Amazing C2. +3 to his main damage output is of course a good Constellation. It's nothing necessary, but it's certainly nice to have. His C4 is alright. It does reduce his ER requirements by a lot, but being able to use his burst more often isn't really all that big of a deal. It does increase the damage it does, which is nice, so it is a good C4, but I wouldn't go out of your way to get this specifically. But it's not a bad con. If you ended up with him at C4 and weren't able to get any more Constellations, I wouldn't be upset. This isn't useless. +3 to his burst isn't so bad at this stage anymore, considering that his C4 makes it usable more often. But of course, it's nothing crazy. And as for C6, of course, it is very, very strong. Now, would I go for Kinich's C6 over other C6s that you can currently get in the whale meta? I wouldn't say that it should be your first priority. It is a strong C6, but I feel like you can get more out of something like C6 Moika as an example. You'll certainly be satisfied. I will say that my experience of nuke-based C6s have been very, very positive. For instance, my experience of C6 Navia, it's very, very fun, and it's also very easy to use. So he's not a bad first C6 to go for. I always believe that your first C6 should be a DPS, because it's going to feel like the most substantial upgrade to you, and he's from Notlan, and Notlan characters have a very high power baseline. So if you're interested in a C6, then yes, it's good. It's not the strongest C6 in the whale meta, but it's solid. I would say the biggest thing that you could do in order to invest into your Kinich is get him an Emily. Seriously, if you're gonna do anything for him, pull for Emily on her rerun. It will do you wonders. Once you've gotten that out of the way, I would get him his signature weapon and then consider getting his Constellations. I would personally stop at C2, but there's no harm in going for the other ones, because I would say that every single Constellation in his lineup is pretty good. I'm personally a really big fan of Kinich. In terms of his aesthetics, he just really lands the mark for me. I love the pixel stuff, I think he looks really cool, and just personally I think Ahau is funny, so I really, really like this character. He is one of my favorite Genshin characters. And his gameplay is just a certified banger. Holy guacamole is he fun to use. So I really like this unit. He's certainly not this must-pull crazy carry, but he's definitely remained consistently strong. At least I personally like him a lot. How about yourself? How's he performing for you right now? Let me know down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. As always, I have a ZZZ second channel. Head on over and subscribe if you're interested in some fun, silly ZZ content. I'd also like to mention that I stream on Twitch. I stream once a week, every week on Saturday, starting from 3 p.m. UK time. Come along so we can play Wuthering Waves, and do some other fun stuff together. Hopefully this video was able to get your Kinich telling his enemies that it's game over. This has been Juice, signing out. And genuinely, Hoyoverse, I need the Ahau lore. How did this thing come to be? And how is he a 2D pixel lad? I need answers.